This is episode 10 with Michaela Guzy.
Welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, the show that empowers you to become the hero of your life's journey. With your host, Brian Tier.
Hey guys and girls, welcome back to episode 10 of the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast. And today we pick up on part 2 of our interview with Michaela Guzy. If you didn't hear part 1, make sure you head on back to listen to that. It's briantier.com/009 and then come back to this one. But on to today's show, episode 10, we get into some of Michaela's most memorable and shocking travel moments. The quadrant exercise, which you guys do not want to miss out on. I found this massively helpful in my own stuff. Why you need to keep your contacts alive, and the thing Michaela still struggles with today. All right, let's check it out. On the website, I've obviously read the Marrakech email. Which I'll link to in the show notes too. But apart from that, what are some of the sort of most memorable experiences you've had from your personal travels, and some things that you still have on your bucket list?
Oh, sure. Well, I have to say the Marrakech email, I mean, that is something that to date, like, continues to circulate, and it happened many years ago. But you know what? Part of the reason I think that the story of my first TICA treatment resonates is, I mean, in addition to being like kind of emotionally scarring, it was a moment where I had no idea what was going on and was so culturally different for me. And while that's not exactly the experience I'd tell everyone to go set out and explore, it is those moments that you have in travel where you're like, what the F just happened? But like, I love that. Like, the more out of my element, like, the better. And like, you figure it out, it works out. As long as you're not putting yourself in like a dangerous and precarious situation, like, it's all good. I mean, there's been so many moments, but, you know, one special moment was actually back here in South Africa. There's an amazing organization called Utandu, and that means love. And this man left his marketing job and he started Utandu as a way to go out and to vet organizations and NGOs that were truly sustainable, meaning that the money was going where they said it was, that it was actually working to operate and support local people. One of his projects is Project Noah, where it's helping the elderly, and it's the last generation, you know, that knew Africa pre-apartheid, during apartheid, and now post-apartheid. And so he's created a wonderful book, which he actually had me write a letter for the introduction, just behind Desmond Tutu, which was pretty flipping awesome.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty cool. But I spent my birthday there, and it was on my first 3-month solo journey across Africa. And we sat around a table and we talked. They asked me questions and I asked them questions. And it was so funny. Like, they're looking at this like blonde hair, blue-eyed girl from Missouri. And you know what? Like, I felt like I was sitting with my grandma, because the first question out of the woman's mouth was, "What are you doing in Africa alone? Don't you have a husband?" "No." And she was like, "Well, why don't you find a nice man and settle down?" I'm like, oh my God, here's this woman in a township of South Africa who doesn't come from much. And like, my grandmother in Chicago says the exact same thing to me. And here, you know, I'm asking them all these questions about the apartheid and, you know, what did that mean to them and how has their life changed? And she just wanted to know why I was single. And I was just like, okay, you know, we really are the same no matter where in the world we're from at the end of it, and through the core. And yeah, that was just like a really sweet and an eye-opening moment for me. but yeah, I'm trying to think, like, in that same trip, through a random set of coincidences, my very first night in Africa, I was about to go on my first safari, something I've always wanted to do. And I was up in Saruni, Samburu is the name of the property, and that's up in northern Kenya, Laikipia. And I'm like kind of nervous and excited. Like, here I am in the middle of Kenya, and all of a sudden I'm like, what the F have I just done? Like, I've just set out on a 3-month journey. I don't even know where I'm going, like, next week. I have no Wi-Fi. Like, I can't even properly pronunciate where I am right now. And so it's like the lodge dinner. And so there's 2 tables, and the lodge manager, probably because I was the only solo traveler sitting in her lodge, comes and sits down next to me, and she puts a stack of business cards down. And I look at the business card and I'm like, Frank Castro, Adventure International. Wait a second. I know that name. And I turn and I look, and here on my first night in Africa, like in this remote area of Kenya, is a guy that stood up and asked a question when I was speaking at a conference in Mexico a year prior. And the only reason, yeah, I mean, right? And the only reason I remember him is because he asked the only intelligent question from the audience the entire time. And, he came up to me afterwards and we chatted for a little bit and exchanged cards. Here's Frank, who operates a company out of Tanzania, but lives in LA, is sitting at the table, like, next to me. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And I was like, and that was my first moment of, wow, when you do what you love, the universe will guide you. And so you can want to do something, and I have all these people that work with me, and my cousins and my sister and people I mentor. I have them do this quadrant exercise, which was given to me by my mentor, which is, if you're doing what you love and you're good at doing it, it's up in the top quadrant. And if you're doing something that you love, but you're not very good at it, that's in the top right quadrant. And then below the line are things that you don't love doing, that you're not good at, and things that you love doing, but you're not so good at. And the goal is to be doing as much in that top left quadrant as possible. Things that you love and things that you're good at doing. And so that means that you'll be doing things the most efficiently. You'll be the most passionate about them. You'll work the hardest for them. And if you are looking to be an entrepreneur or, follow a dream of some sort, that's where you should be focusing your time and attention. And I've come to realize in the past 4 years, even in a personal standpoint, I focus my time and energy on people that fit in that quadrant. And I start to notice more and more that even if I'm like making new friends and these people don't necessarily have to do with what I'm doing, it's not worth the energy that you're going to put into something if someone's not worth your time, whether that's business, whether that's personal. It doesn't mean you have to be mean to them, but there's been a lot of slow phase outs of things and people over the past couple of years. And I have to say, ultimately, you feel lighter, because the same way if you overpack a suitcase and have to lug it around with you for the next couple months and you're just like so sick of carrying it, you're like, wow, you get weighed down by stuff, and stuff can be people too. So
yeah, definitely.
I don't know if that totally answers your question. I kind of went on a rant, but
it was there somewhere. It was in there somewhere.
In there somewhere. So
Michaela, I've never asked anyone this, but I'm really curious to find out. What is your biggest fear?
Ooh. In some ways, my biggest fear is that it's just going to all come crashing down tomorrow. And there have been some really, really scary moments. Like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to pay. I don't have full-time employees, but I'm not going to be able to pay my video editor, or I'm not going to be able to pay my social media person, or the woman that does my administrative stuff. And then, like, if I can't pay them, like, by the way, I can't afford my rent and I can't afford to do this. And all my fears from high school, because like, by the way, in high school I couldn't wait to get out of Missouri, and it's not that it's like such a terrible place, but I just knew there was a world out there that I needed to explore. And the reality is, I've been through a crazy breakup. I've gotten rid of my apartment. I got burglarized a month ago. What I started to realize is that's all just like material, and it's all just stuff. And like, you'll get stuff, and by the way, stuff isn't going to make you successful, and it's not going to make you happy. So I started to realize, like, all I can do is live in the present, with a forward-thinking eye. I need to work hard. I need to listen, and be really true. And so everyone that ever speaks with me is like, oh my God, you have like so many balls in the air. And I'm like, yeah, you've got to, if you really want to be an entrepreneur and run your own company, like, I'm over here and I'm juggling the here and the now and making sure the social media is up and doing a Twitter chat for Africa Chat, and, was speaking at a conference or editing this video. But then while all that's happening and functioning, like, I need to be pitching, like, what is the next story? Who are our next outlets where we're distributing? Like, hey, let's write 2 TV shows. Like, I don't know. And by the way, I've never, ever written a TV show in my entire life. Like, I don't even watch television. So, like, all I can say is when my friends are like, okay, how are you just going to write a TV treatment? I was like, well, I Googled it. And then like, yeah, I know. It's like really, really revolutionary, right? I Googled it and I was like, okay, so that's what a treatment looks like. All right. Okay. And then like, I reached out to a friend who was a documentary filmmaker, so it's different, but I looked at what he did and I was like, okay, so that's like some language you okay. And then I went to this, just ask questions. God, like how I got in touch with PBS or American Public Broadcast. I was at my best friend married one of my family friends' weddings. And while we're sitting there talking, my mom is like, Michaela, you really need to talk to Steve's dad. Steve's dad, he does finances for some really wealthy people. And my mom still to this day has no idea what it is I do. And I'm like, okay, Mom. So I go and I talk to Steve and I'm like, hey, big Steve, congratulations on the wedding. Like, so excited. My best friend is marrying your son and blah, blah, blah. And he was the one that brought it up. And he's like, your mom. And I'm like, oh, God. And he's like, your mom's been telling me about what you've been doing. And he's like, I get your e-newsletters. He's like, I think it's just fascinating. I'd love to understand more. And so I was like, okay. So I sent him an email. I had no idea. I was like, here you go, Steve. Great seeing you. Here's a link to some of the video work that I've been doing. And here's my little series. And he writes back and he's like, this is really, really good. I'm going to introduce you to this man, Jack. He runs the where I grew up, St. Louis, Missouri's public broadcast. I'm just going to introduce you to him. He used to be the chairman of the board for PBS, American Public Broadcast. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so the next thing I know, I'm sitting across a boardroom table, and this man is such a lovely man. He's become a mentor to me. But he actually like reads what I send him and like gives me advice, and sometimes hard advice. But like I've taken that advice and he's looked at my treatments, and I have to say for a first stab at a treatment, I didn't do too bad. But that moment where as well, if you're not a writer, but for me, my moment, like when I know I wrote something and it's really good. Like I had taken this treatment, I had Googled it, I had gotten advice of others and asked others to please read over it for me. And, sometimes I got advice I didn't necessarily want to hear. And you have to be true to your creative mission, but you also need to listen to people who actually know what they're talking about. And so I took most of their advice, but I put it in my own words. And in that sense, I was true to myself. And when I finished that treatment, I was like, this is so good. Yes. And so I ended up sending that to PBS, American Public Broadcast, and I'm waiting to hear what they think. But through other sets of coincidences, this little Bravo talking head series I did, that particular casting agent passed me on to another representation company who was like, wow, we want to meet with you. We want to talk to you not only as talent, but like, you know, Rachel told us that you wrote a couple TV treatments and that you're a great writer. And I was like, oh, okay. So I sent that over. And then the next thing I knew, the production company that did the Bravo pieces were like, you're fantastic. And I was like, yeah, so I wrote these 2 TV treatments. They're taking those to Bravo. And now all these other companies, Travel and Leisure, National Geographic, people who I know through the industry or I used to work with are like, we love your content. It's so inspiring. Like, we'd love to work together. Someone I used to work with now runs, you know, still global sales and marketing for Rob Report, which is a luxury men's brand in the U.S. But now I'm cutting together videos for them and conducting interviews for them at their luxury research conference next month. So just like, be open to it. Keep your contacts alive. You never know when you're going to need them. Ask questions, ask for help, and actually listen to those people.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest downfalls of young people is that they think they know everything. And guess what? Like, that 60-year-old man who looks pretty stuffy in a suit, who has a really impressive resume and still has a pretty impressive job, there's a reason that he got there. And I'm not saying you want his job per se, but he probably has already bumped into all the landmines you still have yet to face. And he probably has a Rolodex that there's no way in your 20-odd years that you have, no matter how digitally connected you are. Like, that person actually has deep, meaningful connections that he's established with people over decades. And when he picks up the phone and calls that person on your behalf that you so need, like, they're going to listen to him versus you trying to cold call him or friend him on Facebook. Like, Facebook doesn't mean that you're real friends, people. Like, let's just be really real. So, like,
What?
like a little bit of yeah, I know, it's shocking. But like, having a little humility as a young person, you know, sometimes it takes just getting slapped upside the face. I did it. I was a young hotshot, and I totally, not that I wasn't doing great work, totally got slapped upside the face. But it took me getting slapped upside the face to be like, oh, well, you know, maybe I'm not the cat's pajamas after all. And it ends up I'm a good form of the cat's pajamas, but that actually I still had a few things to learn. And from that point forward, I have been extremely humble, asking lots of questions, and knowing that there's always something I can do better. All I can do is do my best and get insight from people that I know and trust, or who have a job that I want to do, and ask questions and ask support of, which is a huge thing.
Michaela, I feel like we could be on this conversation all day. I'm really, really enjoying this, but I think we do need to start wrapping up. So I've got 2 more questions. The first one is, if people have listened to this and loved what they've heard and want to check out more about you and other people you meet, where can they find your work and all the different stuff you're doing?
Sure. So, The People You Meet, The People You Meet, does take after Dr. Seuss. It was an inspiration for me from The Places You Go, except, you know, it's travel, food, and philanthropy through the lens of local connection. It's all about the people you meet and telling their stories, so that you as a traveler, whether you're going to South Africa or Peru, can meet someone that brings that destination to life for you, because that is the truly transformative moment of travel. So, The People You Meet has myself plus over 60 contributors. if you go to the travel video drop-down tab, you'll see Michaela's map. That's my editorial video series. We also have some like longer format interview pieces where we just met like a really cool person like DJ Tiger Lily in Australia, who GQ magazine named the blue-haired bombshell. And so we have an extended interview with her. And like, we've got some really hot farmers who are celebrity chefs in Sydney. And then they opened this like hippy dippy awesomeness, sustainable farm in Byron Bay, the beach towns of Australia. So we have like interviews with people like that. They're fun. They're interesting people. And then, you know, if you're ever into marketing work, I have a marketing video tab. Those videos that I did for Bravo TV are also there, as well as some interviews I did with Travel Savvy TV. There's a fun, unexpected Adventures in New York guide I did. And check out if you're into sustainability and sustainable travel and just being a little bit more aware of your surroundings. We have great content on sustainabletravel.about.com. And I don't know, I had the president of the Adventure Travel Trade Association write an article called "Don't Slap the Leopard." And I had another article done by a colleague and friend who talk about random. I met him in the jungles of Panama in 2014. I saw him on a dance floor in New York, and then later in a flash mob on Valentine's Day. And then the next, I know, so random.
You can't even make this stuff up.
No, you can't. And the next time I see him is at Burning Man, and I'm sitting there in the center of the ring as official media to watch my first burn, and I'm standing behind Larry Harvey, the founder of Burning Man. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm having this moment to myself, like to the universe or no one in particular. I wish I had someone to share this with. And I turn around, and this same dude, Zach Bell, is sitting to my right. And I'm like, what the are you doing here? And so we ended up getting to watch the burning of the man. And since then, he's been this just random force in my life. I was asked to a holiday party in December. I'd just gotten off a plane from France in this conference. And I get this invite from like a woman who I don't see very often. And she's like, oh, it's a holiday party. And I'm like, oh, great. Costumes. Oh, great. So I randomly find a holiday costume in my apartment. And I don't know if you're familiar with Bridget Jones and her plant.
I shouldn't admit that, but yeah.
Yeah, well, guess what? I show up to a holiday party where I know a handful of people, and guess who's the only person in costume? Me. Oh, yeah. And I mean, I had gone all out, as you do. So I was a little slutty Mrs. Claus, and it was an abnormally hot day, so I was riding the subway in the Santa outfit. And and so going back to like the randomness of the universe, who's one of the people at the party but this guy, Zach Bell. And he's like, you keep getting more awesome every time I meet you.
I think you have a stalker.
No, not at all. He ended up like just being like, you are the craziest person I know. Like, you're in flash mobs and you're at Burning Man and now you're in a slutty elf costume at a holiday party where no one else is dressed up. And I'm like, yep. So he invited me to come to this workshop, actually. So his company is called The Return. And he puts together some really, really interesting, thought-provoking conversations. I was just out at Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California, which alone is just beautiful. But I went for a workshop on relationships, sex, and modern community, which as a Midwesterner, I was a little like, what am I getting into? Some of the topics were over my head. But for me, because I travel 9+ months a year, the thing that's really hard for me is like, how do I keep a relationship going on the road and be present in so many different circles across the globe? And keep up my friendships in New York and even my business contacts. And so that's something I struggle with each and every day. And it just was interesting to sit in a room full of people who travel a lot, maybe not quite as much as me, but who are trying to find a way to live this very modern communal lifestyle that transcends borders across the globe. And so that is a bit where Facebook and social media comes into play. I think Airbnb will continue to be an important part of my life. Yeah, that's something I struggle with. And if you ever have answers, please email me. My email is michaela@ohthepeopleYoumeet.com, or you can find me on basically any social media channel and hit me up with questions, or if people are interested in contributing or sharing their stories, I'm always interested in hearing them. So,
yeah, Michaela, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your story. It's really, I've been smiling the whole way through this. It's been really amazing, and I know people are going to get it.
Thank you.
I know people are going to get a ton from it, but the final question that I have, it might seem a bit greedy after this long conversation, but what's the one thing that listeners can do this week to start their own quarter life comeback?
I would start by whatever that thing is that's like itching in your gut and you can't quite ignore, that passion point. I would start by signing up for the photography class or taking the coffee barista course or whatever it is. No matter how crazy it seems, just try it. What do you have to lose? The other thing I would do is do that quadrant exercise. So draw a vertical line and a horizontal line intersecting on a page. And in that top left corner, put the things that you love that you're so good at doing. And list them out. It can be sewing, or it can be photography, or it can be writing, or maybe you really love accounting and you're really good at, who knows, whatever you love doing and you're good at, put in that top left quadrant. In the top right quadrant, then list the things that you love doing, but that maybe you're not so good at. And then right below that, put things that you don't love doing, but that you're good at. And in the bottom, bottom left quadrant, put things you don't love doing that you're not good at. And put that on your refrigerator or somewhere that you'll see every day. And you're going to add to it and you're going to take away from it. But start to find ways to shift things above the quadrant and ideally into that left quadrant. So if you're taking things that you love but you're not so good at, that's where the photography lesson or the writing course or the barista course, or start talking to people who do things that you love doing, but that you need help with. Because as you start to move those things from that quadrant to the top left quadrant, where you start perfecting that skill, you're going to be more inspired. You're going to be more passionate. Don't you want to get out of bed every morning? I don't have those Monday blues anymore, or the anxiety on Sunday night, because, well, P.S., by the way, as an entrepreneur, you work every single day. But, right? But I love doing what I do. And yesterday, I was sitting in African Bush Camp's office in Cape Town working from there. Well, guess what? Technically, they're a client of mine. They hired me. I did my Zimbabwe and Botswana editorial video for them. They loved those. They actually ended up hiring me to do marketing video for them. So I did a 5-minute branded storytelling piece and a 60-second sizzle reel. And then that was in 2014, but here it is 2016, and I'm in Cape Town, and they're like, yeah, come to our office, come hang out, meeting everyone and just sitting there and doing my work from there. And I'm like, this is a true friendship to me. And I'm sure we'll work together again one day. But I'm basically their loudest ambassador now, because not only do I have the video talking about them, but here I'm talking to them about them on a podcast, and I'll post about them on social media. So, I think when you love what you do, it's no longer hard and it's not difficult. And even making decisions and scary decisions, the universe will guide you. It will put people in your life. It's up to you and to listen to this person that's been presented to you, or this opportunity that's presented itself to you. If it's not going easily, and I'm not saying that it's easy, you still have to work hard, but if you're trying and you're trying and you're throwing all this spaghetti at the wall and nothing's sticking, like maybe you need to reevaluate that. Go to someone you trust and be like, okay, so I really want to do this, but like, it's just like it's not working. Maybe there's a simple fix, or someone has some insight from 40 years of experience that they can offer you to try it a different way, or to introduce you to someone who will make a difference in the course that your journey takes you.
Other people you meet. Michaela, thanks so much again.
Thank you for having me. It was really nice speaking with you.
Yeah, definitely. And enjoy the rest of your time in South Africa.
Thank you so much. I know I will. You can follow the journey on Instagram.
All right, will do. Thanks, Michaela.
Thank you. Have a good one.
There you have it, guys. That's a wrap for episode 10 of the Quarter Life Comeback and our interview with Michaela. As I said, super fun and such a great interview. If you enjoyed this one, share it around with your friends, and I'd love it if you could leave a rating and review on iTunes by going to briantier.com/iTunes, and shoot me a tweet at briantier and let me know what some of your biggest takeaways were. As always, you can find links to all the resources we mentioned at briantier.com/010. But for now, keep creating your Quarter Life Comeback.
Thanks for listening to the Quarter Life Comeback. Get started today by visiting briantier.com.